Have you ever caught yourself staring into the distance, the weight of a lifetime pressing against your chest? Maybe it was late at night, when the house was too quiet, and the silence seemed to carry the ghosts of every choice you made, every word you swallowed, every dream you let slip away. You think back to moments when you stayed quiet to keep the peace, when you bit your tongue to avoid hurting someone, when you let others define who you were because you thought it was the right thing to do. And somewhere deep inside, there's a question that haunts you. Where did I lose myself? Is it too late to find my way back? If that feeling lingers, if the years have left you with more doubts than answers, this is for you. Because today, I'm going to show you that silence, the same silence you might have mistaken for weakness or emptiness, can be the key to healing your deepest wounds. Not the silence of surrender, but the silence that holds you, that challenges you, that rebuilds you from the inside out. Drawing on the wisdom of Friedrich Nietzsche, a philosopher who wrestled with the meaning of existence, we'll explore how silence can help you face the traumas of your past, find peace in the present, and rediscover who you are. No matter how many battles you've fought, reaching this stage of life is like standing at the edge of a vast canyon. You look back at the path you've traveled, the triumphs, the heartaches, the mistakes, the sacrifices. You see the scars, too, the times you stayed silent to avoid conflict, the times you gave in to keep others happy, the times you stopped fighting for yourself because you thought it was too late. Maybe you spent years living for others, for your family, your career, the expectations of a world that told you who you should be. And now there's an ache, a hollow space you can't quite name. Maybe it's the weight of traumas you've never fully faced, the sting of rejection from someone you loved, the shame of a moment that still burns, the grief for a version of yourself that never got to bloom. Deep down, there's a voice whispering, I should have spoken up. I should have been stronger. But what if that silence, the one you've carried like a burden, could become your greatest strength? What if, instead of regretting the words you didn't say, you learned to use silence to protect yourself, to understand yourself, to heal? Nietzsche, a man who knew the pain of being misunderstood, saw silence not as absence but as presence. For him, those who talk too much are often running from themselves. The ones who shout, who interrupt, who fill every space with their voices, they're hiding something. They're masking insecurities, dodging their own doubts, trying to drown out the quiet that might force them to face who they really are. And you, with the wisdom of years behind you, have seen this. You've met people who talk loudly to avoid their own fears, who judge others to escape their own flaws, who dominate conversations to feel in control. But you've also felt the pull to play their game. How many times have you tried to explain yourself, to prove your worth, to make yourself heard, only to walk away feeling smaller? How many times have you left a conversation with the sinking feeling that you lost, not the argument, but a piece of your soul? Nietzsche called this the herd mentality, the need to fit in, to be liked, to please everyone. For years, maybe, you lived under that pressure, sacrificing your voice to keep the family together, to be the reliable colleague, to avoid rocking the boat. But true strength, he said, isn't about convincing others. It's about not needing to. It's about holding your truth, even when it stands alone. And the path to that strength starts with silence. Picture a moment when you felt invisible. Maybe it was at a family gathering where everyone was talking over each other and your words got lost in the noise. Or at work where your experience was dismissed by someone younger, faster, louder. Or in a relationship where your thoughts seemed to vanish before they reached the other person. You felt that knot in your throat, that urge to shout, but instead you chose silence, and later you wondered, why didn't I speak? Why didn't I stand up for myself? But what if that silence wasn't weakness? What if it was the seed of something greater? What if, instead of blaming yourself for staying quiet, you learned to wield silence as a tool to shield your heart, to uncover your truth, to heal the wounds you've carried for decades? The silence Nietzsche speaks of isn't passive, it's deliberate, alive, powerful. It's the silence of someone who watches, who chooses, who knows that not every fight is worth fighting. But when it is, they strike with precision. Imagine a scene many of us face as the years pile up. A heated exchange with an adult child, an old friend, or a co-worker. They're speaking with conviction, maybe anger, maybe condescension. You feel the urge to defend yourself, to prove you still have a voice, to show you're not invisible. But what if you chose silence instead? Not the silence of defeat, but the silence of observation. You look them in the eye, stay calm, and let them keep talking. Something shifts. The more they speak, the more they reveal fears, frustrations, insecurities they don't even see. And you, without a single word, start to take control. Because silence is a mirror. It reflects the other person's weaknesses, forcing them to face their own words, their own shadows, without the crutch of your reaction. In that moment you realize silence isn't empty. It's a force so strong it can reshape a conversation, a relationship, a life. Nietzsche spoke of the Übermensch, the overman, a vision of a person who rises above society's limits, who creates their own values, who lives for themselves, not for others. For you, at this stage of life, the Übermensch isn't some distant superhero. It's the you that's been waiting to emerge. The you who refuses to be defined by past mistakes, by old wounds, by roles that no longer fit. It's the you who finds strength in stillness, who doesn't need to shout to be heard, who doesn't need anyone's approval to exist. The silence of the Übermensch is the silence of someone who's faced storms, losing a loved one, abandoning a dream, waking up to an empty house, and still stands tall. It's the silence of someone who knows life isn't fair, but believes meaning can still be forged, even now, even after everything. Why is silence so powerful, especially for those who've lived through decades of joy and pain? Because it gives you space to hear yourself. For years, you might have lived in noise, the noise of raising kids, climbing the career ladder, meeting endless demands. But now, with the perspective only time brings, you can choose quiet. And in that quiet, you find answers. You start to see the traumas that shaped you, the rejection that made you question your worth, the criticism that silenced your voice, the loss that left you afraid to hope. Silence lets you face those wounds without fear, without shame. It gives you time to forgive, not just others, but yourself. To forgive the times you weren't strong enough, the times you followed the crowd, the times you thought it was too late to change. Let's talk about those traumas, because they're at the heart of what holds us back. Maybe you carry the pain of a marriage that fell apart, harsh words that were never taken back, or a betrayal by someone you trusted. Or maybe your trauma is quieter, the slow erosion of never being seen, always putting others first, sacrificing your passions for a greater good. These traumas, big or small, leave marks. They trick us into thinking we need to speak, to fight, to explain ourselves to be valued. But Nietzsche offers a different path. He says healing doesn't come from raging against the past, but from embracing the present. And the present begins with silence. When you stay quiet, you stop reacting to what hurt you. You stop giving power to old ghosts. You start building a new purpose, one that's yours alone. Consider a story that might feel familiar. Ellen, a 65-year-old retired teacher, spent her life being the anchor for everyone, her students, her children, her aging parents. She was the one who listened, who mediated, who kept things together. But after retiring, she felt adrift. Her kids were grown, her parents were gone, and her days were filled with a silence that felt more like a void than a gift. At a family dinner, Her son made a sharp comment about her outdated views, and Ellen felt the old urge to defend herself, to list her sacrifices, her wisdom, her worth. But something stopped her. She chose silence, not out of anger, but with a calm that surprised even her. She looked at her son, let him keep talking, and then, after a pause that seemed to stretch forever, said softly, "I've lived long enough to know what matters." The table went quiet. Her son, caught off guard, couldn't find words. Ellen's silence wasn't surrender. It was sovereignty. It was the weight of a life fully lived, of pain endured, of resilience earned. And in that moment, she began to heal. She realized she didn't need anyone's validation to know who she was. Silence, as Ellen discovered, heals because it gives you back control. It pulls you out of the cycle of reaction, justification, and seeking approval. It creates a space to look inward, to understand who you are now, not who you were or who others expect you to be. This is crucial when it comes to trauma. Psychology tells us that traumas live in our bodies, our minds, our memories, triggering anxiety, shame, or anger. When you react impulsively, when you dive into arguments to prove yourself, you feed those triggers. But when you choose silence, you break the cycle. You give your mind a chance to breathe, to process, to find a new way forward. Research shows that in tense situations, silence lowers activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear and anger center, creating a window of calm where you can choose your response instead of being swept away by emotion. But silence isn't just a pause. It's also a shield against those who try to diminish you, to make you feel like your time has passed, like you no longer belong. You know these people. Maybe a co-worker who overlooks your experience, a relative who dismisses your insights, a friend who subtly puts you down. They rely on your reaction to keep their power. They want you to argue, to explain, to play their game. When you stay silent, you dismantle their strategy. You force them to face their own words, their own insecurities. And this is where your years of perspective shine. You've seen enough to know that not every fight is worth your energy, but when you do engage, it's with the wisdom of someone who's walked through fire. How can you use silence to heal your traumas and reclaim your power? Here are some practical steps crafted for those who carry the weight of a long life. First, embrace silence as a safe haven. When a painful memory surfaces, a regret, a loss, a wound, don't run from it with distractions or words. Sit with it. Let silence wrap around you like a warm blanket. Ask yourself, what is this pain trying to teach me? Second, use silence to observe, not just others, but yourself. In a conflict, notice what's driving your urge to speak. Is it anger, fear, a need to be seen? Understanding this gives you mastery over your choices. Third, practice intentional pauses. In a conversation, let a moment of silence linger before you respond. It not only unsettles the other person, but gives your words the weight of truth. Fourth, be selective. You don't need to answer every challenge or prove your worth to anyone. Choose your battles with the clarity of someone who knows time is precious. And finally, use silence to reconnect with what matters. Ask yourself, what do I want my life to mean now? What legacy do I want to leave? Silence helps you hear those answers, but there's a silence you must let go of, the silence of resignation. For years, maybe you stayed quiet to avoid trouble, to protect others, to be the grown-up in the room. Nietzsche called this the slave morality, the belief that shrinking yourself is a virtue, that swallowing your anger is strength, that giving in is maturity, but that silence is a cage. It costs you dearly. Your voice, your dignity, your truth. Think of the times you let someone disrespect you, ignore you, or push you aside, and you stayed quiet, thinking it was the right thing. Each time you gave away a piece of yourself. You told yourself it was for peace, but deep down, you know that peace was a lie. It came at the expense of your soul. Now, with the clarity of your years, you can see it. You can choose differently. Nietzsche didn't write for those who settle. He wrote for those who dare to face their pain, their fears, their traumas, and turn them into strength. He wrote for those who realize they've been shaped by others' expectations, by old hurts, by voices, saying it's too late and decide to break free. The silence he champions isn't submission. It's the silence of someone who knows their worth and doesn't need to shout it. It's the silence of someone who sets boundaries, not someone who accepts them. It's the silence of someone who, even after loss, disappointment, and sleepless nights, finds the courage to live their truth. So how do you make this shift? How do you turn the silence of pain into the silence of healing? Start with a choice, the choice that you deserve better, that you deserve to be heard, even if only by yourself, that you deserve to live, not just survive. This choice is the first step toward becoming the Übermensch, not an unreachable ideal, but the you that's been waiting to rise. The next step is practice. Start small. The next time someone tries to belittle you, resist the urge to explain yourself. Just watch. Notice how they behave, how they try to fill the silence with more words. See how your silence shifts the dynamic. Then try intentional pauses. In a conversation, let a beat of silence hang before you speak. Feel how it gives your words power, how it makes you feel in command. Finally, cultivate presence. The silence of the Übermensch isn't absence. It's a declaration of who you are. It's the certainty that you don't need anyone's approval to exist. Look at your life. How many times have you stayed silent out of fear? How many times have you let others speak for you, decide for you, erase your truth? How many times have you buried your pain, your pride, your story, thinking it was the right thing? Enough. Nietzsche would say that living this way is a betrayal of existence itself, that accepting this kind of silence is abandoning your purpose. From today on, your silence must change. It must stop being an escape and become a space for healing. It must be a boundary, a statement, a testament to who you are, even if no one understands. Because who you are doesn't need to be understood, it needs to be lived. And that takes courage. Do you have that courage? Then claim it. Say it out loud or whisper it to yourself. I choose the silence that heals. This is your pact with yourself. This is the moment you decide to stop carrying the weight of the past and start building a present that belongs to you. This is the moment you begin to live as the Übermensch, not as a myth, but as someone who, despite everything, still dares to dream, still dares to be. The world doesn't need more voices shouting into the void. It needs presences that speak without words. It needs you, not the you who hid, but the you who in silence finds the strength to heal, to live, to be.